please join me in welcoming Clea back to the stage.
Thank you so much. And I will like to introduce Melanie Lynskey. How many people were seeing this movie for the first time? Wow! And how many people have already seen it? Sorry, that was Melanie. Hi. This was the first movie I ever saw you in, obviously, because this is your first movie, which is mind-blowing. How does happen? How did you get cast? Like, how did this come to, because you were just like a teenager in New Zealand, and how did this come to you?
I was 15, and I heard one day at school that some people were coming to audition for a movie, and we were all so excited, all the nerds, the theatre nerds, were so excited about it, and so I went to audition, and I did like an improvised audition with my friend Susie, and at the end of it, we were too excited to go back to school, so we went and sat in the cemetery. And gone through God's phase at the time. And Susie was like, "You got that movie." I could tell by how they were looking at you. And I was like, "Don't be crazy." And then a couple of weeks later, they flew me down to a big proper audition. And I somehow ended up making this movie. Like, my wildest dreams coming true. It was so crazy.
That's so amazing. And I mean, so being just like a teenager in high school, how did they prepare you for this?
Before the audition, they showed me Kate Winslet's audition. Which was so intimidating, and Peter literally said, "That's how good you have to be." And I'd never done anything outside of, local theatre, school plays, stuff like that, so I was terrified. But I understood what he meant, like, obviously, she's so unbelievable, makes me want to cry. And to just see the power of what she was doing, he was like, "It's the two of you, it has to be, on that level." So they had an amazing acting coach at the audition to help me. Miranda Harcourt is absolutely wonderful. She kind of taught me how to act in the course of the day. Because, I'd done a lot of stuff, but like actual, film acting is such a different thing. And then on set, Sarah, who played my mother, was an acting coach for me for some of the time. And I had a couple of weeks where I got to work with an amazing woman called Jennifer Ward-Leland. So they had a lot of support for me.
Do you remember what her audition scene was? Kate Winslet's audition scene was?
Yeah. There's a scene where they say, the scene they showed me was, they're saying that we can't see each other again, and she's crying. She's in a hospital bed, I think. I didn't just watch it. And she's crying, and then at the end of the scene, she just screams. She starts screaming, and I just was like, okay.
Do you remember what your audition scenes were?
I don't. It's burned into my brain that
Hers.
as it would be. It's the first time I ever saw Kate Winslet. Shit. I didn't know people could be actors like that, like teenagers. Like I was in, doing my local theatre, and everyone was like, "Oh no, that's terrible." Crazy.
She really is unbelievable in the movie. It's wild.
Yeah.
Wild. What do you remember about making the movie? Or do you have anything any like kind of core memories that stand out from the experience of making the movie?
Weirdly, I remember basically everything, which is crazy because, there's a lot of experiences you remember bits and pieces. And I think it was just so huge for me and so formative. I just remember everything. And it's hard for me to isolate like a single memory. It just was, the whole thing was just so unbelievable, and Kate and I were so bonded and just spent every minute together. And I just remember just being there. We did a lot of night shoots, and I just remember being outside in the middle of the night as like a little 15-year-old, just going, how is this possible? It's like magic.
Yeah. Do you remember how long the shoot was?
I think it was like 3 months.
Back when you took time to make movies. So
Yeah, exactly.
Like
Yeah.
3 days.
I know.
Go for it.
It was 3 months, and we had like 2 weeks of rehearsal, and I didn't have to do school the whole time. I was like, okay. No time to do any like tutoring or whatever. So
And do you remember the first time you saw it?
yeah, Peter showed it to Kate and I. We got to watch it. Maybe he had a videotape of it. We got to watch it by ourselves in our little apartment when we were there. We were in Wellington together to do ADR. And so it was really kind of him to leave us alone to have that experience together and not have him like looking over our shoulders. So we got to freak out together and cry, and then we went down and said, the murder scene needs to be longer. It was so quick. I think he was really, it like hurt him to show that.
Yeah, because I hadn't seen the movie in such a long time, and I remember the scene being longer, but I'm so glad it wasn't as long as I thought it was, because it is so brutal, and especially like being a parent now, is a really interesting context to watch this movie. I'm really locking my door when I go to sleep. And I'll use some of the notes. I'm going to be a little more lenient, maybe. For my own safety. So you guys watched it and you freaked out and you were so excited?
Yeah, we were so excited. It was so professional. It was, and Kate, it was her first movie. She'd been doing television for a long time, so she had the experience of seeing herself like in something. But even so, it was more, it felt really magical, with special effects and everything. It was just like, oh my God.
Because the clay people were those practical?
Yeah, there were people who were zipped into those suits. They were fainting left and right. We were always just like, oh dear. Someone's got to bring them a cup of water. I mean, it looked amazing, and also for us, I think, we were so hyped up at all times anyway. And then to get to really be in the world, everywhere you look, it's just real. It was crazy.
It really does look amazing. All those clay people, the clay land, like it really, I mean, it's what an extraordinary film. And then, so the movie is done, and now the movie is coming out, or it comes out. What is that experience like for you? Like, coming from New Zealand and like suddenly you're doing interviews and people, like maybe people in coffee shops are saying, hey, they showed that movie. What's that like for you? What was that like? What was the experience like?
It was so strange because I was still in high school, so I would take a week off and go to the Venice Film Festival. I'd take another week off and went to New York for publicity. I told you the story, I know the other night, but
No, you weren't there.
no. It was a different thing. Thanks for reminding me. We got to stay in like the Four Seasons in New York, and we were so excited. And Kate said to me, they just replace the minibar every day. They just bring new stuff. And I was just like, what? Really? And she was like, yeah, you just take your every single bedroom movie. And there was a call from Miramax being like, this bill is unacceptable. Craziest room service bill that we've ever seen. We were ordering Sundays, ordering stuff to the room, and like we were absolutely wild. But it was just so exciting, and seeing the movie at Venice with an audience, and like the standing ovation, it just was so overwhelming. I couldn't process. It was too much for me, honestly.
Yeah, I don't know how a little brain deals with that.
Yeah.
A lot.
Yeah, I was happy to go back to school.
And did people, like in New Zealand, did they see the movie, like friends and your family, all of that?
Yeah, I mean, everybody's
Was that
from the country. It was funny, yeah. I think New Zealanders are better now at embracing good things. There's a little bit of tall poppy syndrome. There's a little bit of like, well, don't think you're special now. It's like, believe me, I don't. I think the opposite. So that was a bit tricky to navigate.
Yeah. And so this, sorry, lost my voice today. I'm sorry. That's okay. I kind of like it.
It's working for you.
When I was a kid and I lose my voice, I would really lean into it. I'm trying not to do that because I'm an adult now. So this movie comes out, and then how did you transition from, this teenager in New Zealand to like coming here and then like really building a career as an actor?
It took a while. Eventually got an agent, and then I just started making terrible little audition tapes. It was so bad. Just because I had to do them with my little brother on our VHS with his bedroom lamp literally under my face. I didn't know what to do. And then, eventually I came over here to audition for the Crucible with Damon Day-Lewis, and that was my first time in America doing a proper audition, and that gave me a lot of confidence. It's something that felt real, and I felt like such an imposter before that. And then I just started trying to work more, and then I did Ever After, and then things got a bit easier. I'm a cheerleader.
I believe that I'm a cheerleader. Experience is very similar to Heavenly Creatures. Just totally similar movies. I know that this is one of my favorite stories ever. And Melanie certainly told it, she was also there for it. But when I was 17, I worked at Buzz Coffee on Sunset, which is now a Starbucks. But upstairs was the lovely Sunset 5. It is now an AMC, Ghost Jobs. And I was working in a coffee shop, and I had just seen Heavenly Creatures at the Sunset 5, and just fell in love with Melanie and was so blown away by her performance. And she came into the coffee shop, and I was like, oh my God, it's the girl from Heavenly Creatures. And I gave her a free coffee, and I told her how much I loved her in that movie. She was so nice about it. And then I think it was a few years later, we were making But I'm Cheerleader together.
Yeah.
And it was really cool for me to be able to be in a movie with you.
It was a huge moment for me, by the way, because no one had ever given me something for free before. And 17-year-old Clea DuVall, the hottest person in the world. It's like, what's happening today? Great. She was like, you can have this. I was like, okay. Come here again. This is overwhelming. Never Buzz Coffee. But it was a very big deal. Very exciting. Yeah, and then we were making fun of a cheerleader.
Life's crazy, huh? Time, life, all of
So you're so young in this movie, and so is Kate, and it being both of your first movies, portraying actual people who were both clearly very disturbed. How did you channel those characters and it being your first movie? So impressive.
Thanks. We got given this crazy, huge folder of research that Peter and Fran had done. And they'd done just hours and hours of interviews with people talking about their memories of those girls. We knew about their personalities, we knew about their family life, just anything you could hope for. And then it was just, we had such a great director, and I just trusted Kate so much. It was a really great experience. Thank you.
There's some people kind of in the back and the middle.
Hello. I'm so curious how your relationship with Kate changed throughout the course of production. Like, what was it like when you met, and what was it like by the end of shooting, and how did it change in the middle? And kind of how similar was it in relation to your characters, minus the murder? Sorry, so soon.
Obviously I was so intimidated at first. I had seen the audition, and then Peter took me to the airport to meet her from the plane, and she just was stunning. She was wearing a leather jacket. She did not look like she'd been traveling for 24 hours. I just thought she was the coolest. It was very big sister, little sister vibes for the entire time, where I just was like, I'm so uncool, I don't know what I'm doing. But she was very, very kind and gracious, and wanted the movie to be as good as possible. Days where, the day where I had to film my part of the fantasy sequence where the ship is going away and I'm screaming, she was there for all of my stuff. And so we got very close, in a way that it was healthy. It was tricky because we were doing such crazy psychological stuff, and the murder took 3 or 4 days to film, I think. And we kind of stayed in a little bit of a crazy place the entire time. We get home from work and we were just kind of sitting there, and we allowed ourselves to stay a little bit crazy. And then at the end of production, it was just really sad to say goodbye. It just was, I don't think either of us wanted the experience to end. But then, we were excited to see what the movie was going to be like, but it also felt so much more than a movie, so it was weird to say goodbye to it.
There's another person sort of.
Hi guys, I'm Abby. Thank you both for being here. You clearly have an inherent ability to be an actor, as you've seen throughout your career, and I was just wondering what skill is inherently in you that makes you an actor, but also what is a skill that you've learned throughout your career from other actors or directors that you've worked with?
Oh, thanks. I think, I'm so shy. I'm as comfortable as I could be right now because I have my big screen next to me, so that's nice. But there's something about getting to be in somebody else's body. When I was a child and I was doing school plays and stuff like that, it was very appealing to me, and suddenly I was more confident than when I was myself. These days I have to do photo shoots and stuff like that, and sometimes the photographer is like, you're an actor, can't you act like you were good at this? No, it's not really how it works. most photo shoots. Tell me more. I wouldn't take that. But there's something for me, I'm much more comfortable when I get to embody somebody. So I think that was the thing that I inherently had, and also being shy, you're just kind of an observer, so I was always watching people and noticing things about people, being like, well, that's an interesting thing, listening to accents. And then, I guess over the years, I guess you learn to listen to your own instincts more and not second guess yourself and just trust. Usually the first idea is the best idea, is what I feel,
I think I saw another, oh wow, there's so many more hands than before.
Hi, Bubble. Hi. So I'm thinking about two things that's happening in the movie. It's, this movie came out in 1994, so it wasn't 2025. So thinking about both this country and the world's relationship to, queerness and homosexuality. And also, it's like a big psychological, mindfuck. This young person who killed their parent. So I'm thinking, what was how were you prepared for that, for those two things, right? In the context of how the world is holding queerness and also this year 15, I don't know how old Kate was out then, but young people dealing with the story of a young person who's ill because of queerness expression and all of that stuff. Yeah. What was your preparation like?
Well, again, we had that crazy big folder that was full of research. For me, I guess my mother really, first of all, my mother always wanted a gay child. She was really hopeful that one of us would be gay. She got one. But it was always this sort of, she was always very excited that one of us might be gay. And so I never had to think about queerness. It always just felt like a possibility and a possibility. What do you think? It's very interesting. But because of that, I made out with so many girls, so many, which was great. But I didn't have any hesitations going into it, even though it wasn't really something that was really as accepted as it is now. I had a friend who had two gay mums growing up. I don't know, for me, I sort of didn't have any thoughts about that. And then I think we were just so deeply within the characters that everything made so much sense. I didn't want to kill my mother, but I had an understanding of that kind of rage, that I didn't have the most settled home life. So, there was a certain chaos energy, I think, that I could bring to it.
Last question. Do you want to make your call?
Oh, no.
I'm gonna let you go. Okay.
If there's someone who's had their hand up the longest, maybe that just fairness.
Okay, all that up.
Hi. First of all, you guys are great. Love you guys. That was really cool movie. I was wondering if it was intimidating to be portraying real people, because these characters were, unless I'm crazy and I'm wrong, but they were real people. Was it intimidating to the prospect that they weren't just characters? They were humans?
Yeah.